Let's geek out on some gear, shall we? Today, boys, we're checking out Dimebag Darrell'S gear through the years. What is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. A very exciting video, and a video that I put certainly a lot of time and effort to make sure I get it as accurate as possible. If you're brand new to my channel, thank you so much for joining me today, and if you could please hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. So Dimebag Darrell, what more can you say, right? He's just an absolute legend, and his gear is just as famous as the man himself. One of the most sought after and most difficult tones to emulate in rock and metal history, and today we're going to be checking out his gear from the start of Cowboys from Hell all the way through the beginning stages of Damageplan and how he went about getting his sound. Disclaimer, guys, now I'm going to be going through a lot of the main stuff with Dimebag Darrell's tone, guitars, and amps alike. However, I'm not going to cover literally every single thing because he has had a lot of guitars, and it's hard and it's boring to talk about every single different paint job and make and model. I'm hitting the main points and the main thing used in each album. Okay, boys? So without further ado, let's talk about Cowboys from Hell. Now, the Cowboys from Hell tone is arguably the most famous and hardest to replicate in Dimebag Darrell's history. Actually, in rock and metal history in general, the Cowboys from Hell is absolutely near impossible to get nowadays, let's be honest. Yes, you can use some of the gear used back then as well as some new stuff, but however, you're not Dime, it's all in the fingers, right? And even more so with the tone is the most famous guitar, arguably in metal history, is the Dean from Hell. The story behind the Dean from Hell is it was a 1981 maroon Dean ML that Dimebag Darrell actually won in a shred contest, right? But when he was a teenager, he wanted a car, so he sold the maroon Dean ML for a yellow Pontiac Firebird. After several years after being apart from the guitar, Dime actually found it again in the possession of Buddy Blaze. After talking with Buddy Blaze and then finding out that it was in fact Darrell's guitar at one point in time, Buddy Blaze then decided to give it as a gift, but before he did, he gave it some upgrades. First, the iconic lightning bolt paint job, right, that we all know, that we all have seen on dozens of magazine covers and live videos. Then he threw in the Bill Lawrence 500XL pickup, as well as a 59 Seymour Duncan, and then he even threw in a Floyd Rose. For guitar amps during the Cowboys from Hell record, now I've seen several different articles like Guitar World and Premier Guitar talking about what exactly the head was. I've seen it being a Randle RG100H as well as a Randle RG100ES. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe it was the one Randle 100ES. Correct me if I'm wrong down below in the comments. His signal flow from the guitar actually, before it went to the Randle head, was in fact the Furman PQ4 and then the MXR 6-band equalizer. That is what absolutely shaped the tone of that album, was those two pieces of gear in front of the actual amp. And one other piece of gear used during this time was the Dean Concrete Sledge ML, which can be seen in 1991 in Russia. Alright, so now that we knocked out Cowboys from Hell with the absolute iconic 1981 Dean ML, the Dean from Hell, let's talk about Vulgar Display of Power. For Vulgar Display of Power, there's two main guitars used during this time. It was the Dean from Hell, and then what is called the Far Beyond Driven Dean, which is like the tobacco burst, which can be seen a lot in the 92 era, especially in the One Guitar Clinic video that's all over YouTube, but most notably is the music video for Walk. The only amp that Dimebag used during this time, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Randle Century 200. This is the amp that was used in the Vulgar Display of Power era, as well as Far Beyond Driven, which is a nice segue into Far Beyond Driven. Now, this was Pantera's first #1 album, and it was just absolutely huge, and this was when Pantera was absolutely on top of their game. And ironic enough, it's pretty much the exact same gear as Vulgar Display of Power. The Dean, the Far Beyond Driven Dean, the Tobacco Burst, and the Dean from Hell, which can be seen in 5 minutes alone. Again, the amp is the Randle Century 200. So now, during this period of time, it's kind of boring between Vulgar Display of Power and Far Beyond Driven, because it is pretty much the same setup. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But in 1994, this is when things started to change in Dimebag Darrell's gear. In 94, Dean went out of business. Darrell then became a Washburn artist. This is when he started to use solely Washburn guitars and even kind of shied away from his tried and true Dean from Hell. In 1996, the Great Southern Trendkill came out. There's a couple different paint jobs used during this time, but the two most iconic are definitely the Washburn FM 333 with the Rebel flag finish, as well as the camo finish that says Trendkill on it. One final guitar that's a bit of a rarity. I don't know exactly when this guitar was used, but I think it was during this time period was the Washburn Culprit guitar, which is kind of like an Explorer looking type of weird wonky looking thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was used around this time period. Let me know down below in the comments. Now for the recording of the Great Southern Trendkill, this is actually a really interesting story for several reasons. The first reason is this is when the band started to kind of separate. It wasn't a tight, fine-tuned machine anymore. Phil Anselmo, as we all know the stories, where he started to become heavily involved with drugs and alcohol due to his back problem. This is when he recorded his actual vocals for that album in New Orleans at Trent Reznor's studio, and then the rest of the band, Rex, Vinny, and Dime, all recorded it at Dimebag's home studio. The recording studio was created when Dimebag Darrell got off a tour off of Far Beyond Driven, and then he wanted to invest his money in something other than tattoos and beer and alcohol alike, so he actually created a home recording studio. And this was just, originally the intent was to just have it as kind of like a demo space, but then the tones that were created and the tracks and the demos that were created in this recording sessions were actually just fine-tuned, re-recorded, and mastered, and those were the actual tracks used on the Great Southern Trendkill. For amps, I read in a Guitar World magazine that it was actually the Cowboys from Hell setup, meaning it was the Randle RG100S with the Furman PQ4 as well as the MXR 6-band equalizer. He wanted to go back to basics, what was tried and true in the early days of Pantera, and that is what he used for the Great Southern Trendkill. Alright, which then brings us to the year 2000 for reinventing the steel. The main guitar used for recording as well as touring during the reinventing the steel era of Pantera was the Washburn 3ST Dime Stealth. The black and the silver, man, it just looks absolutely killer and sleek and awesome. And actually Ola Englund himself has a copy of this guitar. This guitar can be seen used for live Flood stuff in 2001 as well as Revolution Is My Name music video. For amps, during the recording of Reinventing the Steel, it was actually a Randle Warhead prototype. Like the Dime Stealth, the Randle Warhead can also be seen in the Revolution Is My Name music video. This brings us to the very end of Dimebag Darrell's music career and life. Unfortunately, it was cut very short in 2004, and it actually ended on a pretty somber note even before then. The story goes that the band was on tour in 2001, and then due to the tragic events of 9/11, the band had to take a quick touring break, but they never actually played again. Phil Anselmo became extremely distant and completely detached from the band. There was a lot of internal conflict and basically just never ever came to fruition again. So the Abbott brothers created Damage Plan, and Dimebag, just before his passing, changed up his gear one last time. Dean Guitars was brought back to life, and much of that credit can be given to Dimebag himself. The company and Dimebag signed a contract saying, hey, he was the sole endorser of Dean Guitars and that he would create his own different new lines of signature models and paint jobs alike. Now during this time, during the end of the Reinventing the Steel tour days, at the beginning and the end of Damage Plan, this is when Dimebag had a very huge assortment of paint jobs. He was seen with a couple Dime Slime Washburns, and then he was seen with the Damage Plan Hellaflage Washburn, but arguably the most famous guitar used during this time was the Dean Dimeflame. Now this is also there when the Dimebucker was created by Seymour Duncan, and you can see the Dimeflame was equipped with this pickup. For amps during this time was probably the biggest change in Dimebag Darrell's career. He went from solid state stuff to finally going to a tube style amp. Crank, a very kind of unknown brand name at the time, created the Crank Revolution. Dimebag absolutely loved it, and then they began working on a prototype, and then ultimately will become the Crankenstein. I don't believe Dime actually used the Crankenstein. I think it was created after his passing. Much like the Crankenstein, Dean Guitars actually created two signature models that Dimebag himself actually worked on and created, but he actually didn't get the chance to play them. These are the Dean Dime Bolts and Razor Bolts. I don't believe he actually played them, and unfortunately he passed away December 8th, 2004. So that is Dimebag Darrell's gear through the year, guys. Oh my god. Guys, I put so much work into this video. I really did a lot of research, kind of like a homework assignment, man. I really wanted to nail this, and I'm sure I didn't cover every single paint job and every single model and every single piece of gear. I wanted to hit the main points, but if I did get something incorrect, I'm not perfect. I'm learning just like you guys are. Leave it all down below in the comments. I seriously want to make sure I have the most accurate comment section down below. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I really wanted to put my honest and true hardest and genuine effort into making this video. Also, leave down below in the comments whose gear you want to see next. Leave it all down below, what guitar icon you want to see me cover next, and I would love to do my research and put it out there for you guys. Thank you so much for watching to the end of this video. If you're brand new, please hit that subscribe button. Like and share this video if you found it informational and educational. It really helped me out. Alright guys, I am out of here. Stay metal, and I'll see you guys next time.